happy holidays and happy new year, everyone, since by the time I post this it's probably going to be 2021 already, so fingers crossed 2021 is better than 2020. We're choosing to be optimistic, at least I'm choosing to be optimistic. So today's video is just going to be a reading wrap-up of what I read in December 2020. I read 5 books in December, and then I'm on a 6th book now, but I'm just shy of halfway through on that, so I don't think I'll be finishing that this year. Sounds dramatic, this year as in like one day from now, but yeah, I'll just get started then. The first book that I read in December was Thin Air by Anne Cleeves, and this is a British mystery novel, and it's book 6 of the Shetland series. So as the title of the series suggests, this is a mystery that takes place in the Shetland Islands, and in particular this one is on the island of Unst. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly though. So I rated this book 3.75 out of 5 stars. I liked it quite a bit. I honestly really have enjoyed this series so far. This style of mystery is definitely really up my alley. My only real complaint was the ending, or at least the final conclusion. For me personally, and this is probably just a personal thing, I just found the conclusion wasn't the logical one that I would have chosen, but I still really like this book, and I especially like this series for the atmosphere. That's definitely one of the main reasons that I've been reading it and enjoying it. And when it comes to mysteries, I definitely tend to prefer a lot of Nordic noir or Scandinavian noir, whatever you want to call it, as well as more like traditional British mysteries. This one does not tend to follow the cozier side of British mysteries like your Midsummer Murders and those kinds of things. It's closer to British authors like P.D. James, for example, who borrow more from like the English Gothic tradition. So you have more desolate landscapes and kind of more of that brooding atmosphere. So that's kind of more along the lines of what this series is like. And you might actually have seen the TV show for this series, because there is on Netflix Shetland, the TV series, which is based on these books, which you actually see there. Detective Perez. Yes, so I really enjoyed this book, and so I'll move on. The next book that I finished in December 2020 was the last book in this series. So this is Octavia Butler's Patternist series, and this is the Seed to Harvest Omnibus that contains all 4 books in that series. I did another video on that not long ago, so you can check that out in the videos or playlist section. But yeah, so this one was Clay's Ark. Like I said, the last book in this series. I rated it 4.25 out of 5 stars. Pretty awesome science fiction for sure. And it takes place in the distant year of 2021, which when it was published, because this was published in 1984, is, you know, still several decades into the future, which is scary to think about now. So this book, like I said, it's science fiction, and it switches between 2 different timelines, I guess you could say. The first one follows a scientist, I guess I'll put it that way, follows a scientist who's kind of desperately wandering a desert in the US. And the second timeline follows a doctor and his 2 daughters who are about to have their lives really turned upside down. So this is definitely dystopian science fiction. The world that it's in is definitely more dystopian than ours, but it feels very real, which is kind of like classic Octavia Butler. Like, she doesn't just make things up out of the blue. Like, she definitely borrows a lot or incorporates a lot of social issues and realities from the real world in her dystopian settings, in her futuristic settings. So yeah, it's a great book. Like I said, I rated it 4.25 out of 5 stars, and definitely highly recommend this series and anything by Octavia Butler. The third book that I read in December 2020 was a series that never disappoints me ever, at least so far. This is Battle for the Abyss, and it is book 8 in the Horus Heresy series. And the Horus Heresy, of course, takes place in the Warhammer 40k universe, about 10,000 years before the main 40k universe. So this is taking place in the 31st millennium, and yeah, If you haven't heard of this series, it is military science fantasy, and like I said, it hasn't really disappointed me yet. The series is supposed to be dystopian, but for me, it's so over the top that like I can't find it anything but fun. Like, it's not depressing or anything like that. It's just really over the top fun, even though it is supposed to be this world of war and all that. I really love reading about the Astartes. I'm definitely there for that. And it's interesting because this series, I thought, strangely got quite low ratings on Goodreads, or at least low ratings by Goodreads standards, which is kind of strangely skewed. But a lot of people saying that they found it slow, or there wasn't much happening, or all sorts of stuff, and I can't say I agreed. I really enjoyed this, especially after I wasn't like Legion, the book before this was good, like it was decent, but it didn't have enough Astartes for me. It didn't focus as much as I wish it had on the Alpha Legion. Yeah, this one I liked that it refocused things again on the Astartes, in this case the Ultramarine Legions, who have joined up with the Space Wolves. They've joined up with some World Eaters and some Thousand Suns on this desperate, totally outgunned chase across space and across the warp to stop a ship full of heretics from destroying their home planet. So, yeah, the heresy is spreading. Anyways, I really enjoyed this book. Always loved this series, so had fun with that. And I also wanted to say I really enjoyed that this book, I think it's the first book I've seen so far that really had a good World Eater POV. So yeah, after this one, I think I could do with more World Eater POVs. But in general, I really like the Ultramarines as well. So overall, good book, 4.25 out of 5 stars for me. So the next book I finished in December was Empire of Weil by Cherie Dimaline, and I rated this 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was a great book. It had really, really well written characters. The characters and the humor were definitely like the strong point in this series. They felt really real, really genuine, and the humor kind of reminded me, if anyone has read the Trickster trilogy by Eden Robinson. So the humor kind of reminded me a little bit of that series. But yeah, it was. I really liked the characters and the humor in this, and the story was also quite good as well. So basically, the main character of this book is a Métis woman named Joan, and she lives in a fictional community called Arkand on the that's supposed to be on the Georgian Bay, somewhere in the vicinity of Aurelia. So Joan's husband went missing almost a year ago, and she hasn't stopped searching for him. A lot of other people have stopped looking at this point. They think either he's dead or maybe he just kind of up and left her, but Joan thinks something has happened to him. She wants to keep looking. So that's the main focus of this book. But in the background of her search for Victor is Loup-Garou folklore, basically Métis version of Loup-Garou folklore. So, and in this book, Loup-Garou legend is used to talk as a way kind of talking about community disappearances, community murders, and tragedies that happen, and is very much raveled up in the ongoing realities of modern Canadian colonialism, for sure. I think another reason why I really enjoy this and kind of hit home quite a bit is just being from Ontario myself. Even just some of like the random events or places that she references felt very familiar. Like even when she's talking to her grandmother, I think, and her grandmother makes reference to the guy that got decapitated on the Greyhound bus. Like, I remember when that happened, and honestly, it's still something that is kind of lodged in the back of my mind anytime I get on like a Greyhound bus or whatever. The other thing, going off that too, just being Franco-Ontarian as well, like some of the aspects of Loup-Garou legend reminded me some of the stories of that my grandparents used to tell me growing up, like when they talk about like it taking the form of a black dog on the road. And I remember my grandmother telling me these stories as a kid, for example, of something that she claims happened, or that she said happened to in her community as a kid, of this hearse kind of going down being drawn down the road, and then a black dog coming and sitting underneath the hearse, and then no matter what anyone could do that nobody could make the hearse move because this, what was supposed to be a loup-garou, was underneath the hearse, so they had to call a priest to try to expel this so that the hearse could keep moving. So yeah, just hearing those like tidbits that kind of linked up with stories that I was told as a kid was kind of cool and kind of fun to read as well. Last year, the year before, I can't remember, I had also read her other book, Marrow Thieves, and this one I thought was I think this was the strongest of the two for sure. That one was good, but I think for me it just read very young. I think it was meant very much for like, I would say like early high school, late middle school, maybe that was a target audience. This one felt, like I said, I loved the characters quite a bit in this one. I thought they were really well written. In just general, I thought this was much stronger, so that's why I thought it was strange. Again, Goodreads, the reviews seem to be lower on this one than for Marrow Thieves, and I couldn't help but wonder if it's because maybe a lot of people who really, really liked Marrow Thieves went into this one thinking it would be the same thing. But honestly, these books, the two of these books are very, very different, I would say. Very different in style and writing. The characters are quite different. I would definitely say this is the strongest of the two, and if you did enjoy Marrow Thieves, perhaps just don't go into this one expecting the same thing, basically. So the last book that I finished in December 2020 was in this compilation, I think is a very pretty book. So this is, I don't know if you can see there, this is Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol and Other Stories. So this contains all of his Christmas books that he published over the years. Last year I read The Christmas Carol because I couldn't remember if I had read it. I was a huge fan most of my life of the black and white Christmas Carol. Is basically my favorite holiday movie. And then this year I decided to read the next one of his Christmas books, which was called The Chimes. But yeah, you can see it's kind of a nice, edition, I thought. Anyways, basically I've decided to read one of these every year. So last year, Christmas Carol, this year, The Chimes, and then next year, etc. We'll get through them slowly. So yeah, this year was The Chimes, a goblin story of some bells that rang, an old year out and a new year in. So very long title. So this is a story about an old ticket porter, and his name is Toby Veck, but everybody calls him Trotty, I guess because of the way he trots around town looking for jobs. But Trotty loves the bells. He loves the church bells. When they ring, he feels happy. He feels encouraged by them. He feels like the bells are his friends. But on this particular day that the book takes place in, Trotty encounters some very Scroogey beings. So he encounters a wealthy judge, a philanthropist politician, and a utilitarian philosopher. just the type of people that will make your day, right? So basically, these three individuals shame and condemn him and all other poor people as being ungrateful, lazy, greedy criminals, natural-born criminals, and Trotty comes away feeling like he's kind of bought into their shaming, to their ideas. He comes away thinking like that he has no reason, no right to live. Him and other poor people have no right to live. That they cause nothing but misery, and that they're no good. So yeah, Trotty's day is not going so well, and especially because he also encounters them while he's with his 20-year-old daughter. So yeah, everybody's day is ruined by these people. His Christmas stories so far seem pretty political. He's always drawing in events, newspaper articles, things that are happening in his world. A lot of these are him taking jabs at politicians, especially Tories, conservative politicians, for the way that they are treating the poor, essentially. So he's definitely taking aim at these patronizing and hypocritical people that he sees them as. These kinds of politicians that spend the year kind of supporting laws that only further impoverish the poor, that only further criminalize, that only further make their life unlivable, and then once a year pat themselves on the back because they've fed them free Christmas pudding. So yeah, he definitely takes aim, and that's why I like this edition too, because it's got a lot of footnotes that gives you background information about who he's pointing the finger at, what types of events he's making reference to, and all that. In a lot of ways, this book too is kind of like A Christmas Carol, except in this case, you don't have three ghosts coming to scare a capitalist into wealth distribution. You instead kind of have a different type of ghostly visitation. But yeah, I'm so far enjoying these Christmas books. Next year I'll read the next one, which I think is called The Cricket. What is it called? The Cricket on the Hearth. Yeah. So some classics there. And then now to the book that I'm currently reading, and that is Silver Tide by Jen Williams. And this is the third book in her Copper Cat trilogy. I read the first two books last year, I think both in December of last year, or maybe November, I can't quite recall. But basically, Angry Robot, who were the ones publishing the North American editions of this series, published the first two, but did not publish the third, and I guess just decided not to do that in North America. So I had to order it in from the UK, and then by the time it came, I kind of was getting distracted by all types of other books. So now I'm finally getting to it. This one I'm about 250 pages in now, at 258 pages in, and I'm really enjoying it. I've really liked this series quite a bit. The main characters in this book are sellswords, or adventurers for hire, and in each book they take on a different job to explore some cursed place or desolate place that nobody else really wants to go to, and they're doing this on behalf of their employer, and it's usually to recover a treasure or an artifact or something like that they've been hired to recover. In this book, they actually have been hired by one of the main characters' own mother, who is a pirate, a notorious pirate who wants to go to an island. It's of course a cursed island, to recover knowledge, treasure, all those usual things that people want to get their hands on in these types of stories. So she hires her daughter, who is again one of the Black Feather 3, so a sellsword, and her friends to accompany her mother on her pirate ship to recover this treasure. I feel like it leans more heavily towards sword and sorcery, kind of like with Kings of the Wild, where it's more like a modern blend of modern sword and sorcery with more epic fantasy, high stakes in the background. But even though the stakes eventually become more kind of classic epic fantasy stakes, the main focus is still on the mercenary adventurers, who are really only find themselves in this situation for their own personal reasons, in this case because they've been hired, rather than setting out with a noble goal or a noble cause that they're just on a noble and heroic quest for. These guys have just been hired on, and then they fall into these situations and then they have to solve them. I really liked the first two books of this series. I think my favorite would have been Iron Ghosts. I thought the world building in that one was awesome, and I would say Jen Williams' strength is definitely on the world building for sure. The different peoples and creatures that she creates really captured my imagination, and especially in the Iron Ghosts, when we get into the land of the Gnarl, and it's just like this frozen landscape, and everything is adapted to that landscape, but in this really imaginative way. And I could just read more books set in that setting. I just was blown away and loved that setting a lot. I think my only problem with Iron Ghosts was that I'm not a big Frith fan, and I'm the main villain in this one was not I just kind of found him boring, I guess, compared to the rest of the world she had created. Just like with everything else that surrounded this main villain, I was just like, dude, you're boring compared to all these other people and all these places and all this other stuff going on. So yeah, with that one I just could have done more with Sebastian and Gudrun, the two other main characters, just kind of exploring the north. I would have been down with more of that and more books on that for sure. So far, The Silver Tide, I'm finding the villains in this one to be a lot more interesting than the second book. Really liking it so far. Really, again, the world building is amazing. Just again, her imagination for just creating different types of creatures, different types of worlds, and like the idea, the main plot in this one is very enjoyable as well. And actually, Frith himself is less annoying in this book than he was in the last two, so that's a plus. So far this is a 4-star read for me, but we'll see what happens. Like I said, only about halfway through, but really enjoying this. Anyways, that is the end of today's video. That is everything that I have read in December 2020. If you've read any of these and you feel like commenting, feel free to do that below. And yeah, if you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.